Good morning. Ito po ang kasunod sa hypothesis testing step 1. So, consider natin itong problem na ito para sa iba pang mga steps. So, ito yung problem. Automotive engineers tested the gas mileage in kilometer per liter of a certain passenger car. A random sample of 35 cars, ito na yung N natin, resulted to a mean of gas mileage. Ito yung ating sample mean. Okay, mamaya ay susulat natin lahat ng given. The population standard deviation is 2.5 km per liter. The company manufacturing this car claims, ito yung pagka may sinabing claims, ito na yung ating mu doon sa step 1 natin na alternative or yung null hypothesis. Depende sa statement. Claims that it has an average. Ibig sabihin, equal siya. Gas mileage of 16 km per hour. Test, this claim is valid at 5% level of significance. Pagka merong ganitong problem, i-review natin yung step 1 dahil nakalagay dyan ay claims that it has an average of 16, ito agad yung population mean. So, null hypothesis, H sub O, semicolon, mu is equal to 16. The opposite of the null hypothesis is the alternative hypothesis. Kung ito ay equal, ito naman ay not equal. So, step 2 is to determine the level of significance. Paano natin malalaman ang level of significance? Ang level of significance ay matatagpuan sa problem, kung in percent or in decimal. So, nakalagay dyan, test if this claim is valid at 5% level of significance. Mamaya ay papakita ko sa inyo yung mga corresponding z sa mga alpha level of significance. Okay? So, ito yon. Step 2, alpha is 0.05. Test 3. Step 3 pala. Step 3. Ang step 3 natin, test statistic. Ibig sabihin, ko-compute natin yung value ng test statistics. Dahil ang ating n ay 35 doon sa ating problem, ang ating sample mean is 15 at yung mu, population mean is 16, standard deviation is 2.5. Dahil ang ating population ay 35, bahagi siya doon sa gagamitin natin na z. Okay? Z. Kasi pagka ang n natin ay less than 30, hindi na z ang iyong gagamitin. T. So, meron tayong t-table din na gagamitin. Pero dahil sa ang ating n ay more than 30, gagamitin natin ang z. So, ang formula, ito ang formula ng z. Ayan. So, baka ito ay medyo maliit. So, ito. Okay. So, ang formula is the population sample mean minus the population mean over standard deviation. Kapag ang given ay variance, ang variance kasi ay ganito symbol. Pagka ganito, kunin mo yung square root of the variance, ito yung standard deviation. Pero dahil ang standard deviation na ang given, direct na natin i-substitute. Okay? Ang n is 35. So, in computation, makukuha natin yung negative 2.36. Okay? So, that is our test or step 3. Compute the test statistic. So, ito yung z natin. Okay? So, pupunta tayo doon sa step 4. Okay, step 4 natin ay critical region. So, ang critical region, mas madali maintindihan. Sa critical region, meron na tayong Z table na may nakalagay na alpha. Ito yung alpha natin. Pakita ko. Magalaw eh. Ang alpha natin ay 0.05. Diba? Yun ang alpha natin. So, dahil ang ating null hypothesis ay equals at ang alternative ay not equal, so meron tayong dalawang tailed. Ibig sabihin, yung critical region natin ay naandito sa area. Mamaya papakita ko. Pero yung critical value, makikita natin dito. So, dahil 0.05, ang critical value ng two-tailed, yan, 1.96 ang positive critical value of Z at negative 1.96. Okay? Yan ang pagkuha ng critical value. So, isusulat natin. Sulat natin para mas maliwanag. Ang critical value ay positive 1.96 CR, critical value, and negative 1.96. Paano mo malalaman ulit yung critical value? Titingin ka sa table na ito. 5% dahil two-tailed siya, positive 1.96 at negative 1.96. Okay? So, para may pakita ko sa inyo yung region na yan, so ito drawing natin. Yan. So, dito sa critical value na ito, negative 1.96, positive 1.96. Yung 5% o 0.5 na alpha natin, ito, paghatian ngayon ng dalawang portion na ito. Yung 5% divided by 2, that is 2.5% or 0.025. Okay? Yan, itong area na ito ay critical region. Ang critical values are ito, 1.96, negative 1.96. Pagka yung makompute nating value ng Z ay mas malaki dito. Okay? Mas malaki. So, tignan natin kung mas malaki nga. Kung naandito sa portion ng rejection region, by the way, ito yung rejection region, ang ating white area is acceptance region. Okay? Acceptance region. Yung black is rejection region. So, yun ang kukunin natin doon sa decision making natin. Okay? So, natapos na natin ang step 4. Ang step 4, na determine natin yung critical values. These are 1.96 and negative 1.96. Okay? So, napakita na rin natin yung region of rejection. Andito. Siyempre, kung ito ay 1.96, kung lalampas doon yung mako-compute mo, reject mo yung null hypothesis. Yan ang ating step 4. Sasabihin mo dun sa step 4, ano lang natin, tutuloy lang natin yung step 4 natin. Tandaan mo, reject the null hypothesis if yung z natin na na-compute ay greater than or equal to 1.96. Okay, reject mo yon. So, doon sa ating step 5, magkakaroon na tayo ng decision. Okay, step 5. Ang decision natin, tignan natin yung nakuha nating yung nakuha nating value ng z. Yan. Okay. Tignan natin. Magde-decide tayo. Decision natin. Because yung nakuha nating z, no? Negative 2.37. So, sa absolute value to kung absolute value to. Kasi meron din to sa rejection region kasi dito. Yan, 1.96. Ang negative 1.96, negative 2.37 ay nandito siya sa bahagi dito. Okay? So, nagfo-fall siya doon sa rejection region. Okay? So, ang ating magiging conclusion diyan, syempre, because negative 2.37 is less than negative 1.96, so nandoon siya sa rejection region. Reject the null hypothesis. So we are going to decide now. So we reject the null hypothesis. Reject the null hypothesis. So, ito yung decision natin. Because negative 2.37 is less than negative 1.96, reject the null hypothesis. Okay? So, therefore, there is a sufficient evidence at 5% level of significance that the average gas mileage of the car is significantly different. So, kung ang ating ang ating step 1, ito yung ating step 1, null hypothesis daw, there's no difference. So, ang ating alternative hypothesis, there is a difference. So, ito yung i-accept natin. Ito, reject natin. So, ano ang magiging conclusion natin? Pinaka-huli. Okay, decision. Pwedeng ganito ang paglalagay. Because negative 2.37 is less than, ito kasi critical value, ito kasi meron ding 1.96 dito Dito yung nag-fall yung ating na-compute na z. So, because negative 2.37 is less than negative 1.96, reject the null hypothesis. Yan ang decision. So, pwede mo siyang isulat na ganito. Maraming paraan in essay, basta mahalaga ma-explain mong mabuti yung decision na yan, pwedeng hindi exactly na ganito. Since the computed z-test statistic falls in the critical region, ang tawag doon sa rejection region is critical region. That is, z is equal to negative 2.37 is less than negative 1.96. Reject the null hypothesis. Ito yung notation. Therefore, kung siyempre na-reject yung null hypothesis, there is a sufficient evidence. Yan, pwedeng gamitin ito sa sulat ng decision making. Okay, there is a sufficient evidence at 5% level of significance. Laging ilalagay itong level of significance that the average gas mileage of a car is significantly different from 16 km per hour. Okay? So, yan yung mga steps ng ating hypothesis testing. Okay? Kakaroon pa tayo ng isa na lang example. So, mapakita ko sa inyo. Okay. Ito muna tayo. The times of random sample, ibababa ko na lang konti. Yan. The response times of random sample 40 medical emergencies were tabulated. The sample is 13.25 minutes. The population standard deviation is believed to be 3.2 minutes. Okay. The EMS director wants to perform hypothesis test with 0.05 level of significance to determine whether the service goal of 12 minutes or less is being achieved. So, tandaan, tataas na natin ng konti pa. Ayan. Tandaan natin, ang unang step natin, gamit ang critical value. So, meron tayong step na or technique na ginagamit din ng p-value. So, siguro sa susunod na discussion, p-value method tayo. So, ganito. First step, kukunin natin yung alternative and null hypothesis. So, meron tayong keyword dito na nakalagay dito. The EMS performed the hypothesis test with 5% level of significance to determine whether the service goal of 12 minutes or less. So, kung mayroong equal or less than or equal, doon siya sa part ng null hypothesis. Diba? Lagi kong sinasabi, kapag may equal sign, doon sa null hypothesis. Siyempre, kapag less than or equal ang null hypothesis, automatic, kung ito yung curve, yan, for example lang, so, halimbawa ito, kung ito yung portion dito ay less than, yan, less than or equal, so for example lang ha, ito kasama yung 12 dito, yung kabaliktaran naman dito, yung alternative dito naman siya. So kung ito yung ating null hypothesis, okay, ang alternative hypothesis natin dito naman, ano yung symbol dapat dito? Ito yung 12, for example, greater than, okay, M is greater than 12. Ganun ang ating step 1. So, yan ang ating step 1, alternative hypothesis, M is greater than 12. Yung null hypothesis, nakalagay naman dyan na the service goal of 15 minutes or less. Okay? So, next step, that is our specify the level of significance. So, makikita doon sa problem yung level of significance. So, susulat mo na lang. So, dahil ito ay one-tailed test, gagamitin natin itong table na ito. Z table. Mayroong alpha type of test kung one-tailed or two-tailed. Tingnan natin yung gagamitin natin 0.05. Okay? So, one-tailed lang siya. So, 1.65 ang ating Z. That is called the critical values. Okay? So, dito yon, level of significance 0.05. Mamaya ano natin yung critical value na yon na 1.65. Positive lang siya. Okay. Dito tayo sa compute the value of statistic. So tignan mo tong computation formula. Sample mean minus the population mean over standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So, ito ay nasa problem. Yan. Tandaan yung ating mu laging nasa o yung m o yung mu nasa alternative or nasa null hypothesis, yung number na yon. So, that is our population. So, ito naman 13.25. Ano yung 13.25? Sample, yun naman ang sample mean. Sample mean. So, yun ang ating sample mean, 13.25. Ang ating population mean, yun nakalagay din ito sa null hypothesis, minus 12 over the standard deviation 3.2 divided by square root of, yung 40 na to, yung bilang, yung number of n or yung population. The responses or the response times for a random sample of 40 medical emergencies. Yan. So 40, yun ang ating n. So ipapalit lang natin, ang nakuhang z ay 2.47. So step 4, determine the critical values. Paano natin makuha yung critical values? Katulad ng ginamit natin dito, for alpha, that is level of significance of 0.05, one-tailed siya, ito ay, yan, 1.65. So, ang ating Z, critical values, ay 1.65. Ito ay 1.645. Okay, i-round off mo, 1.65. So, yan ang step 4. So, kapag yung makukuha mong Z ay greater than or equal sa critical value, syempre, nandun sa rejection region yon, diba? Dahil lang, kukunin ko lang yung papel. Ayan. Ayan. Ito yung ating normal curve. Okay. Ito yung ating 0.05 na level of significance. So, halimbawa, nandito siya. Okay, nandito yung Z. Yung Z natin, that is our critical region. Or critical values, sorry. Critical value. So, nilagay ko kanina ata CR, no? Critical region, ito naman yun. Critical value, balikan natin, that is 1.65. Kung yung computed Z, if Z is greater than the critical value, nandun siya sa rejection region. Ito kasing black ay nasa rejection region. Kaya, pagka mas malaki yung na-compute mong Z, doon sa critical value na 1.65, reject mo yung null hypothesis. Okay? So, yan ang ating decision. Magsa-set up ka ng ganito sa step 4. Reject HO if Z is greater than or equal to 1.65. So, step 5, this is now your decision. Dahil yung na-compute na Z ay greater than or equal to 1.65 na naandun yan sa critical region. Ayan. Kasi pagka ang critical value mo ay 1.65, ang na-compute mo ay 2.47, syempre automatic 1.65 nandito siya sa portion na ito, yung ating Z. Kaya mare-reject nga yung null hypothesis. So we reject. So pwede kang maglagay ng statement, there is sufficient statistical evidence to infer. Bakit ganito yung yung ating statement? Babalikan natin yung claim. Ano yung claim ba natin? The EMS director wants to test the hypothesis at the 0.05 level of significance to determine whether the service goal of 12 minutes or less is being achieved. Ito yun ang ating null hypothesis. So, dito, there is a sufficient evidence to infer that the Metro EMS is not meeting the response goal of 12 minutes. So, hindi siya 12 or less. Okay? So, mas mataas. Okay? So, that is our decision for this example. Okay? So, maaring hindi lang ganito yung ating yung ating statement. Maari din naman. Because the computed Z is 2.47, that is greater than or equal to 1.65, that is the critical value, we reject the null hypothesis. So, babalikan mo yung null hypothesis, ito, na ang goal nila ay 12 minutes or less. So, hindi nila maaabot yon, yung 12 minutes or less na response time. So, mas matagal o kaya mas malaki yung minutes, hindi lang 12, maaaring 13, 14, 15. Pabilisan kasi yung response, di ba? Response time. So, yan ang ating pangalawang example. So, baka meron pa tayo dito example na isa pa. Ayan, meron pa nga. Ito naman. So, the average in entrance examination in mathematics at CBN High School is 80 with standard deviation of 10. A random sample of 40 students was taken from this year. Okay. Examinees, and it was found to have a mean score of 84. So, ang ating tinatanong, ayan, is there significance difference? Yun yung null hypothesis. Is there a significance difference pagka there's no significant difference, null hypothesis yun. Is there a significant difference? Ito yung alternative hypothesis. Between the known mean and the sample mean. Okay. Test at 0.05 level of significance yan. Okay. So this indicate that this year batch it better in mathematics than previous batches. Okay, since 40 ang ating n and only one sample is given, then we are going to use this formula. Actually, itong formula na ito ay the same din doon sa formula na pinakita ko. Na ginawa niya lang na simplify lang siya over ano kasi yan pwedeng i-restate yung formula. Pero kung gagamitin yung formula na binigay ko, same din ang maging sagot. Substitute natin yung mu doon sa 80. Okay? First is formulate the null hypothesis. Okay. Ang ating null hypothesis is ito. Mu is equal to 80. Kasi nakalagay doon sa problem natin. Nakalagay dito, ito yon 80 with the standard deviation. The average score entrance examination is, yan. Yung is na yan, yun ang equals. So, yun ang ating null hypothesis. Ang null hypothesis, there is no significant difference. Wala siyang pagkakaiba. So, equal. So, ang ating null hypothesis naman, or alternative hypothesis, there is a significant difference. So, not equal. Okay? So, step 2, what is the level of significance? Nakalagay naman dyan sa ating problem. Ito ay 0.05 ang level of significance. So, dahil ito ay 5% level of significance at not equal kasi yan. Kaya, two-tailed test. Okay? Two-tailed test yun. Ang two-tailed test, ang ating critical value, tabulated value, or critical value is 1.96 and negative 1.96. Okay? So, that is the step 3. Step 2. Ang step 3 ay you can compute now. Okay? So, magko-compute ka. So, pag natapos mo computation, ang makikita mong sagot ay ang ating z na makukuha mo ay 2.53. Okay? 2.53 sa formula yon. So, iba't ibang libro kasi, iba't iba yung parang pinaka steps. Pero ito, maaari na nating gamitin yung steps na yan, no? Para sa pag-compute ng z value. Okay. So, kukompute natin. Ang ating formula is z is equal to sample mean minus the mu over the standard deviation over the square root of n. Okay? So, i-substitute natin yan. Ang z natin, pag sinubstitute natin, 84 minus 80 over 10 divided by square root of 40. Okay? So, ang makukuha mong sagot, ang z natin sa calculator lalabas ay 2.53. So, balikan natin yung ating yung ating critical value. So, ano ang critical value natin? Ang critical value natin doon sa ating ginawa, that is our step 4. Step 4 tayo. Okay. So, natapos na natin yung step 3. This is our step 3. ang ating Z ay 2.53. Okay? Gamit ang formula ito. Ngayon, yung ating it's step 4, kukunin natin yung critical value. Ang critical value natin batay sa pinakita ko ng table, kapag 5% level of significance, tingnan natin ito, pag 5%, yan, 5% level of significance at two-tailed siya, 1.96, at saka ang critical value natin 1.96 and negative 1.96. Kung ito yung normal curve, 5% daw yung ating level of significance. Ito yung rejection region dahil two-tailed test siya, negative 1.96, positive 1.96. Ito yung ating critical value. So pag kinompute na natin na-compute na natin yung yung ating Z sa step 3. Yan. Ang Z natin ay 2.53. So nasa lampas dito sa 1.96. Nandito siya 2.53. Dahil yung computed value or the Z is equal to 2.53, which is greater than the critical value, so nandito sa rejection region. So ang yung step 5 ay magdi-decision ka na. Okay? So maaari ka ding sa step 4 pwede mo na ring i-set yung magiging magiging decision mo sa step 5. So pwede kang maglagay reject HO if Z, yung computed Z is greater than or equal to 1.96. Okay? So dahil positive yung Z, dito tayo maglalagay o magiging basihan natin ito sa positive area. So medyo malapit ako ito. Layo-layo ng konti. Ayan. So ito ang ating setting of our decision. I-reject natin yung HO, null hypothesis, if the computed Z is greater than or equal to the critical value. Okay? Dito na tayo sa step 5. Ang step 5 natin, decision making. So, ang decision making, ito na yun. Pakita ko sa iyo. Yan. Decision, reject the null hypothesis since the Z value is 2.53 and it is greater than the critical value that is 2. Hindi na to. Ang critical value niyan ay 1.96. So, mas malaki yung 2.53 kaysa 1.96. So, conclusion, there is a significant difference between the hypothesized and the sample means. Okay? Ganun lang po kasimple ang ating hypothesis testing. Sa susunod ay ang ating gagamitin naman ay yung t-test. Kung ang population natin ay less than 30. Okay? That's all for today and God bless. Bye-bye.